Hello and welcome back. I'm Barbara O'Neill, and today we're diving into some of the most exciting tips for weight loss. Shedding those extra pounds isn't just about enhancing our appearance. It's about feeling healthier and more vibrant in our everyday lives. Have you ever been frustrated by diets that claim to offer quick fixes but fail to provide lasting results? Achieving weight loss involves truly understanding our bodies, making informed nutritional choices, and developing healthy habits that can stand the test of time. So, join me today as we explore practical strategies for achieving lasting and sustainable weight loss.
The first thing I'm going to look at, and there are a few factors that come together to cause this, and that number one is the food that we're eating. When we looked at the liver, we looked at this. And this morning when we looked at diabetes, we looked at this. So we're going to look at it again in relation to weight. And it's the high carbohydrate diet that many people are eating today. So bread is very common. Cereal, there's a whole aisle devoted to cereal. And many people having bread and cereal for breakfast, by mid-morning they're wanting something else, so they reach for, and we're just going to say cakes, etc., because if we say everything, there's not enough room on the board for it. When you go into muffins and croissants and donuts and pasties and pies and pastries, etc., etc., etc. So we're just going to put etc. Also, pasta. So what did I grow up with? Sausages or chops, mashed potatoes, frozen peas or beans every single night of the week, except for Sunday when Mum would do a roast lamb. And everyone I knew ate like that. Rice, I'd never had rice. I don't think I went to a Chinese restaurant till I was about 18, and that's the first time I ate rice. Potatoes, well, we ate potatoes every meal. And last and certainly least in nutritive value is the pure crystallised acid extracted from the sugarcane plant.
That pure crystallised substance extracted from sugarcane. Yes, it's essentially sugar. It's fascinating to consider how something so sweet and simple has become such a significant part of diets all around the world. Sugar, in its many forms, has found its way into countless foods and beverages, becoming a staple in daily consumption for many people. Interestingly, as our sugar intake has steadily increased over the years, we've also seen a concerning rise in health issues like obesity and diabetes. It really makes you pause and reflect on how our eating habits and dietary patterns have evolved over time.
Our gastrointestinal tract is a hollow tube. And anything that goes into that hollow tube is not part of you or me until it gets broken down into tiny little particles, then it's absorbed into the blood, then it becomes part of you and me. The Bible says in Leviticus 17:11, the life of the flesh is in the blood, because it is the blood that carries the nutrients here to the CBD, the central business district of the human body, is the inside workings of the cell. In fact, one writer called the blood the river of life because of what it carries. And so it brings the glucose. The glucose goes in under the action of insulin, goes through the 20-step pathway. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the inside workings of the cell now. Yes? And that 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? To get glucose, to run our energy cycles. The end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into what's called the powerhouse, called the powerhouse because these 8 little chemical reactions, this 8-step pathway, delivers impressive 36 units of energy. And the reason why the 8-step pathway gives 36 units of energy is the presence of oxygen. So this is called the aerobic pathway, whereas this pathway is called the anaerobic pathway because it does not use oxygen. It produces energy by the process of fermentation. So when When we eat the carbohydrates, they're broken down to glucose. The first place the glucose is sent is to the cell. The second place it is sent, because only so much can go through the energy cycles, then it is stored as glycogen. We looked at this morning and how that's particularly useful for the diabetic, having these little, well, it's useful for everyone because they're little molecules of glucose sitting in the muscle cell. And that's why the best place to, or the best time to exercise is early morning. Because in early morning, when you're starting to move, some people say, well, how are we going to get fuel to actually exercise? It's your glycogen stores already sitting in your muscle cell. And when the cell needs it, it's plucked and it's released. Amazing process.
Fat plays an essential role in our diet because it helps us feel full and satisfied after eating, which is a key component of a balanced and healthy diet. When individuals focus only on cutting out fats and instead load up on carbohydrates, particularly when aiming to lose weight, they might overlook this important aspect. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, which our cells utilize for immediate energy. Any excess glucose that isn't immediately needed gets stored in the form of glycogen, primarily within our muscle cells. This stored glycogen acts like a reserve fuel tank, which becomes especially useful in the morning when our bodies begin to move and require an extra energy boost.
But on the high carbohydrate diet, and this is what a lot of people don't realise, especially when people go on a weight loss diet and stop all the fat, yeah? Fat-free this, fat-free that, fat-free, fat-free, fat-free. And yet what are they eating? Lots of carbohydrates. Do you know fat gives the feeling of satiation or satisfaction? And the best weight loss diet is a diet that stops your hunger. And fat stops the hunger. So what's happening on this high carbohydrate diet? People have eliminated the fat and they're eating lots and lots and lots of this, not realising that that excess glucose, once we've filled up the energy cycle, we've filled up the glycogen stores, and so now the body sends it to the fat cells. And on this high carbohydrate diet, what's happening to Americans and Australians? They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, it's one of the most dangerous fats because what the body does is it stores it in the probably areas of the body that's not used a lot, maybe the arms, the belly, the hips, the thighs, and then when that gets all filled up, then it starts to go to the internal organs, weighing them down. Sugar and the hybridised wheat. And the hybridised wheat is found in most breads, cakes, cereals, pastas, pizzas. Because it gets the blood sugar level up so high, so fast, as we looked at this morning, then very quickly it's dumped as a visceral fat on the belly, showing this process. And another fact, another very misunderstood fact, is that glucose burns at 4 calories per gram, whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. Now this piece of information, which is fact, is in just about every weight loss book as proof that if you want to lose weight, don't eat the fat. It's going to give you more than twice the calories. But what the people don't understand is what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. And if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat. It's going to give you more than twice the units of energy compared to glucose. But if you're eating more calories than you can burn, yes, it's going to be stored.
However, if you're consuming more calories than your body can burn off, they will inevitably be stored as fat. The problem isn't just about the total number of calories, but also about how our bodies metabolize different kinds of calories. Excess carbohydrates, particularly refined sugars, cause a spike in insulin levels, which encourages the body to store fat. This issue is made even worse by modern diets that are high in processed foods, packed with sugars and refined grains. In contrast, fats, when eaten in moderation and sourced from healthy options, provide a steady stream of energy and can actually aid in weight loss by keeping us feeling fuller for longer and helping to stabilize blood sugar levels.
That's why one of the best things that you can do for weight loss is to eat breakfast like a king. I have to admit that I think I eat lunch like a king and breakfast like a queen, but whatever. And sometimes the queen eats as much as the king. Lunch like a queen, and then tea like a pauper, or you call it supper, yeah? I think that when I say tea, you probably think I mean a cup of tea, yeah? But we call an evening meal tea. And as one lady said to me, well, what do paupers eat? I said, sometimes nothing. What many people are doing today, and I see it in many countries I go to, they eat breakfast like the pauper, they eat lunch like the pauper, and the tea or the supper is the king and the queen together. That's like going on a journey, and you start your long journey and you go to the gas station, we call it a petrol station, call it a gas station, and just put a little bit in. And then an hour later, put a little bit more in. And then an hour later, put a little bit more in. And then you've done this all day. And then you finally get to your destination. You go into the gas station and you fill your tank and then park it in the garage. How much sense does that make? And yet that's what most people are doing. Little bit here, little bit there, little bit there. End of the day, king and the queen together. And the body says, finally, we've got some nourishment. And then they say, oh no, they've gone to bed. So what are we going to do with all these calories, these units of energy? We're just going to have to store them. It's really only probably the last 100 years that the main meal has been had at the end of the day. In fact, traditionally, the main meal was always in the middle of the day, especially before electricity, because they didn't have the light at night and it was just more convenient. I was talking to a man who grew up in a little English village. So I was talking to him about 18 years ago, and then he was in his 60s. And he said, the schools closed down, the mines and the businesses closed down, and everyone used to go home and have their main meal. And he said at night we'd have bread and dripping. Well, that was considered something like. So in many cultures you will see that traditionally the main meal was always had in the middle of the day.
The challenge with irregular eating patterns is that they disrupt the body's natural rhythms, leading to inefficient metabolism and energy storage. When we habitually skip or skimp on meals during the day and then overeat at night, it throws off the balance our bodies need to function at their best. Breakfast sets the tone for the day by kick-starting our metabolism and supplying essential nutrients after a night of rest. It's like fueling up at the start of a journey to ensure you have enough energy for the whole trip. Lunch helps maintain that energy, keeping us focused and productive. Dinner, ideally, should be a lighter meal to support the body's winding down process as we prepare for rest.
So Atkins threw a spanner in the nutrition world's wheel, and it needed the spanner thrown into that wheel. And the only reason his patients got away with it for so long is the 3 cups of vegetables a day, which have an alkalizing effect. But the beauty of the plant proteins, it's much cleaner burning fuel. It doesn't leave an acid waste like the protein does. And when I was consulting with this man, he said to me, I believe if Dr. Atkins had read the China study, Atkins would have become a vegetarian. What an interesting comment. So you can get those results, but you can do it on a plant diet, as long as you do the legumes. And so many people say, oh, legumes, you've got to soak them, you've got to cook them. Well, when you go home tonight, just fill up the saucepan and fill it up with lentils. In the morning, rinse it well, bring it to the boil, rinse it again, put it in your slow cooker. There's lots of shortcuts. Or soak a whole lot, rinse heaps of them and then put them in snap lock bags in the freezer. Then you just pull it out, cook them. There's lots of shortcuts. And you can get organic beans in tins. Just make sure you bring them to the boil and rinse them very well. So it's easy, it need not be difficult. You see, animal protein, it burns at, so let's look at protein. Animal protein, only 58% is burnt as fuel. So that's a 42% waste. That's the acid waste. And that's what Dr. Colin Campbell found in his book, The China Study. He could switch cancer cells on and off, and we looked at this briefly when we looked at cancer on the first night. Because it's an acid waste, and cancer thrives in an acid environment. We looked at that. Whereas plant protein, it's a lot cleaner burning fuel. It doesn't have that acid waste. So with plant protein, you're getting up to about 80% easy is burnt as fuel. That's a big difference. So your plant protein is a superior protein. Your brain is the fattiest organ in the body. It must have fat. The myelin sheath that is around the arm that comes out of the nerve cell, it's mostly fat. If someone's on a fat-free diet, on cholesterol-lowering medication, because that fatty substance is mostly cholesterol and it protects the nerve cell. So if someone's on a fat-free diet, cholesterol-lowering medication, and got a mouthful of mercury and eating fish every day to try and get some more protein, but they're having huge amounts of mercury and big exposure to chemicals, well, that's disaster. There's your Parkinson's disease, there's your multiple sclerosis, there's your dementia and your Alzheimer's, because then the brain cells are getting damaged. So we need to be having nice amounts of fats. How much? Well, not much. It's a very concentrated food. Maybe a teaspoon a meal, maybe not even that. You don't need much. I don't know about you, but I couldn't drink a cup of oil. No, not attractive. But you would be surprised how much oil a person is consuming when they eat a whole meal of, say, fish and chips and scallops, all that fried food. They're almost consuming nearly, probably between half a cup and 3/4 of a cup of fat. And it's damaged fat. That's the fat that is dangerous. There's no doubt about that. But because there are dangerous fats, unfortunately, they've all been classified as dangerous, but they are not. And it wasn't just that he was eating breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and tea like a pauper. It wasn't just that he was on a low carbohydrate, high fibre, generous protein and healthy fat diet. It was also the fact that he began to drink more water. He was having 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. And when you start drinking more water, it's also time to start having some whole salt. But it's the fourth point that I think made a dramatic effect. It all has an effect. And that was the high-intensity interval training. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you inside the cell and show you why the high-intensity interval training is so affected. So this is intervals of high intensity, intervals of recovery, and it's done for a cycle. And Doug McGuff, the heart doctor, he suggests 30 seconds high intensity, 90 seconds recovery for a cycle of 6. There's 15 minutes a day.
Thank you for joining me today as we delved into the essential topic of weight loss. Keep in mind that reaching and maintaining a healthy weight is a journey that requires sustainable lifestyle changes. Whether you're aiming to lose just a few pounds or working towards a more significant transformation, The key is to understand your body's needs, make mindful dietary choices, and incorporate regular physical activity. I encourage you to take these insights and start applying them to your everyday life. Remember, small steps can add up to substantial progress over time. If you have any questions or wish to share your experiences, don't hesitate to reach out. Here's to your health and well-being. May your journey toward a healthier, happier self be both successful and fulfilling.